In 1964, Ella Baker said, "Until the killing of black men, black mothers' sons, become as important to the rest of the country as the killing of white mothers' sons, we who believe in freedom cannot rest until this happens." Freddie Gray, Sandra Bland, Philando Castile, Trayvon Martin, Michael Brown, Eric Garner, Tamir Rice, Ahmaud Arbery. There are too many names to keep up with, but now we must add another to this tragic list: George Floyd. A black man in Minneapolis who could not breathe as a white police officer pressed his knee to his neck for 9 minutes. Onlookers pleaded. 3 other officers watched. A voice in the video says the officer is enjoying it. "Look at you, your body language, you bum." And in fact, with his hand in his left pocket, the officer looks content to keep George Floyd pinned to the ground with his knee as he slowly dies. This is Loki Mulholland, and it's time to get uncomfortable. We're joined by freedom writer and civil rights activist Levon Brown. Levon, I called you up and said we got to talk about this, and I appreciate your willingness to do so on such short notice. How are you feeling?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if this, to some people, this comes as a surprise. To me, it doesn't. It, there's a similarity between what the woman did in Central Park
Right.
and what the cop did in Minneapolis.
So in Central Park, this woman um, is asked by a black man to put a leash on her dog, as it's the
Right.
law. And on camera, she threatens she'll call the cops and is very explicit that she will weaponize his color against him. And this woman, Amy Cooper, who subsequently got fired and lost her dog to the animal rescue shelter she got it from, she knows what she's doing.
Yes.
She knows the fear black men in particular have when it comes to the cops. She also knows that their racial and gender dynamics plays into the black beast rapist mythology.
If you listen to the video,
Uh-huh.
you watch her voice change
Oh yeah.
because she wants to get the police there. And what's more important is she knows that she's in the right. In her head, she's right. Why? Because there's a black guy over in the woods telling her what to do as a young white woman.
Right.
And there's no difference in what she did, except for nobody died, and what the cop does. But what's going on in their head is, I'm in the right.
Well, I'm in the right
So
because I'm white.
that's the only reason. That's the only reason.
I mean, it's a height of privilege that she is actually being recorded, knows she's being recorded, and
Absolutely.
still does this. I mean, she lays out exactly what she's going to do
Right.
and thinks she's going to get away with it.
Absolutely. The cop does the same thing. He is comfortable because all he's killing is a black guy. A
Right.
black guy, incidentally, who didn't give them any trouble. And if he did, it was while he was sitting in his car. They said they didn't have any trouble getting him out of the car. And what my daughter just informed me of, there are 3 other cops sitting on him. I didn't see that part of the video. And they purposely set out, the cop that's sitting on him purposely set out to kill him. Now, I mean, I don't know any other way to look at it because he had handcuffs on. There were 4 of them there.
Right.
So why does this guy have to put his knee on the guy's neck except to kill him?
Yeah, he's accused of forgery.
Yeah,
This is like selling loose cigarettes.
exact same thing.
Same thing. When was forgery a death sentence?
Well, when he ran into this cop, that's what I mean by you never know what cop you're going to run into. And by the way, all the cops I know and all the ones you know won't say a word. They won't say that this is wrong. Why? Because he's a cop,
Right.
right? So they're not going to say. You watch. I have police friends on Facebook. they won't say a word against this guy because in their head, he's a cop. He must be one of us. So I think that's okay. But you let a black man do something to a cop. Oh, Jesus. We got to do something about that. The thing is that let us see what is done to this cop. Yes, he's been arrested. They all been kicked off the force or whatever. Watch what happens.
Right.
You watch what happens.
And this is the same thing that with Amy Cooper, the woman in the Central Park. I mean, yes, she's been fired. Some people were like, "Well, wait a second, do we really need to fire someone for making a mistake?"
That wasn't a mistake.
This was methodic. This wasn't just some accident. This wasn't just this wasn't someone who just simply said something racist and not know it. And that happens. That happens. People
Not
do
only
that.
that,
It's
she will tell you that what she did was not racist.
well, she will tell you that she's
She
not a
called him
racist.
she called him an African American, didn't she?
All right.
The man had no business bothering me.
All right. She
And
called it out.
anybody that says she shouldn't lose her job or that's bullshit.
Right.
What she did was so wrong. But that is the reason, by the way, what she did, that black people to this day, black men, are afraid of white women.
Yeah, they're white tears.
Because if somebody hadn't videotaped that, you can bet that this would be in court forever.
Or he would be dead.
Or he would be dead. Right? So anybody that talks about, they can't figure out and is this right thing to do? What is the right thing to do? If firing her and taking the dog is not the right thing, what is? Especially when you do something to somebody that deliberate because of the color of their skin.
Right. And you're setting a precedence at this point saying, hey, look, we're not. And kudos to the company that did that, by the way, her
Absolutely.
employer, who drew the line and said, you know what, we don't tolerate these sort of people who work for us. Who knows what she's been doing at work? If she's doing this in the park, what is she saying about her fellow black employees or former employees at this point at the office?
Wow. As long as she's making money off of them, it's okay.
Right. So Ben Crump, who's a prominent civil rights and personal injury attorney who represents Ahmaud Arbery's family and has been hired by the Floyd family, says this abusive, excessive, and inhumane use of force cost the life of a man who was being detained by the police for questioning about a nonviolent charge.
Right.
The fear is real. We're seeing this played out on almost on a daily basis at this point, it seems. It's like we're back in the early 1900s. So in The Uncomfortable Truth, the film, we talk about this, where a person was lynched somewhere in America every week.
Yep.
And a year ago, a report came out, just a year ago in August, a report came out that getting killed by the police is a leading cause of death for young black men in America. 1 in every 1,000, which is 2.5 times greater than that for their white counterparts.
If they were going to get somebody, the police in Minneapolis, right, were going to arrest somebody, a white guy, for forgery. If they were going to arrest a white guy for that, you can bet that he would not be laying on the ground, and if he was, there would be no attempt to kill him.
Well, Dylan Roof, I mean, the guy kills a bunch of church parishioners and they take him to Burger King.
Yeah.
Now, legally, they had to. Okay, because under the humane whatever laws and so forth, that he had actually, I guess Dylan Roof had been in hiding. He was starving. He was hungry. So legally, they had to actually take him. But look at the kid gloves they use for that. So I mean, here's this gentleman who they've handcuffed. They have him on the ground, and he says he can't breathe. And what do? Absolutely nothing. Dylan Roof says he's hungry, and they treat him humanely, but they won't treat George Floyd humanely.
They treat them all that way. That's probably not true, but I'm just and we still got black people that say, "Well, I'm not going to vote. My candidate isn't running." You got to change this country.
Yeah.
And anybody that talks to me today is not a good day. to talk to me about it. But if you talk to me and tell me, one, I need to have sympathy for the cop or for this woman in Central Park or for
Mm-hmm.
any of these people, you can go for yourself
Right.
because you know what's happening. You can see it. And I'm gonna tell you, if somebody wasn't filming this, the guy that got shot on the road running,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah, yeah. Ahmaud Arbery.
Now they lynched him. I don't give a fuck what anybody says. They just lynched him.
Yeah.
And the guy who's why did it take so long to arrest the guy that was filming this?
Right.
Because we found out about it because it was on some reason that these
Right.
guys are caught. Now think about what's happening in places where they're not filming. You,
Right. Well, the 4,000 plus people who are lynched in America, those are only the ones we know about.
there you go.
I mean, when they were looking for Cheney, Goodman, and Schwerner, they found other bodies.
Oh well, that doesn't surprise anybody.
So, I mean, your white ignorance is not the same as their black experience.
Right, right,
And the denial that's just right, like you said, right there in front of your face. You can see it on camera. What other explanation can you possibly have except for that you want to live in this state of denial? And truly, at that point, your racism is showing. Plain and simple. My work has taken me to a lot of places, and I've been fortunate to meet some incredible people. But when I came to Selma and met Joanne Blackman Bland, I knew I was in the presence of greatness. Joanne was 11 years old when she was attacked on the Edmund Pettus Bridge on Bloody Sunday in 1965. She wasn't old enough to vote, but understood its importance enough to be there. After Selma is an in-depth look at how our right to vote has eroded since the signing of the 1965 Voting Rights Act. The fight for the right to vote continues. Get informed. You can find After Selma on Amazon Prime or visit LokiMulholland.com to purchase a copy for your collection.
I don't know. It's something that keeps people from saying, this is wrong. What is a fucking statement? Well, let's wait a minute and let's be fair about this. No, there's no fair. Fair is putting everybody in jail who breaks the law.
Right.
Fair is arresting the cops. Fair is throwing this woman wherever the fuck she's going to get thrown. That's fair.
Right.
But when you come talking about, wait a minute, we got to see what they're like and what we're doing to their families, and their families, by the way, think they have some right
Mm-hmm.
because that's the breadwinner. Well, who gives a fuck?
Right.
I told you today is not the day to catch me.
Apparently not.
After a while, you just get tired of it.
Right.
And all of those people who know better aren't saying anything. Speak up. Now, what do you do? Now, they had a march for Aubrey, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you could see that it was a mixed crowd.
Right.
It was white, black, all kinds of people. I don't care what color they are. I care that they're marching. I care that they know that this is wrong. And I care that they're speaking up.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I care about.
Right.
And at some point, that enough people have got to realize that this is not going to stop unless we stop it.
Yeah. As we were speaking, Dory Ladner, the Dory Ladner, right?
Yeah, I know Dory.
Yeah, I know you know Dory. Major civil rights activist from Mississippi, heavily involved in the movement, of course. She was just calling me as we were speaking, and it brings back to me. We are recording this right now. It's May 27th, and this will be released tomorrow morning, May 28th. 57 years ago, on May 28th, was the Jacksonville War sit-in. There will be people who will be sending messages applauding my mother, thanking her for what she did at that lunch counter in Jackson.
Right.
And I can't help but think of Memphis Norman, who was pulled off his stool by an ex-cop, kicked in the head, bleeding from his nose, from his ears, from his mouth, uh, permanently damaged, could have been killed. He was one of the lucky ones. He wasn't killed.
Right.
Yeah, and the work that you guys did this so many years ago, what's got to be running through your mind as you look back at the work you did and where we are still sitting today? I mean, those words from Ella Baker, I use that in presentations. I'll show a picture of Kaepernick kneeling,
Mm.
and then I'll bring up her words, but I won't tell people who said it or when.
Right.
I said, does that sound like what he was protesting for? And people, oh, yeah, okay, yeah. They agree with that. I said, well, that was said in 1964. That's why he was kneeling. It's because it's still going on.
Right.
But just thinking back, what's going through your mind as a civil rights activist who was so heavily involved in the day-to-day struggle to see this lady, Amy Cooper, to see George Floyd being killed?
The thing that gets me more upset than anything else is that the kind of stuff that we had to face back then,
Mm-hmm.
I still see today. I don't see as much, but I
Right.
see it. And people have stuck their head in the sand and pretended that all the issues have gone away. So you get you they see stuff and it's like, well, that's different. No, it isn't. It's the same thing in a different guise.
It's just not
It's
black and white
the,
photographs anymore.
it's the same thing. And I'm telling you, the thing that's important for me anyway is if they didn't have somebody taking pictures of this stuff,
Right.
more than this would be happening. Just like then. If
Right.
the reason America got upset, and I was silly enough to feel that most of America was upset. But if people got upset because they saw stuff. They saw that people were put in jail. They saw that the buses got burned. They saw stuff that these kids got hosed down in Birmingham. They saw that, and then they became numb.
Mm-hmm.
They became numb. Today was telling me how was as a black person telling me that they're not going to vote because it's all the same. No, it isn't. And by the way, don't talk to me. Get the away from me if you believe that it's the same. It isn't.
Mm-hmm.
They are still black people. I mean, we can be that woman that was called the police was in Central Park. That's in New York. That's not Alabama.
Yeah. This isn't
That's
Carolyn
it.
Bryant. I mean,
No,
and Emmett Till. This is,
it's right here in
but
New
it could have
York.
ended up the same way.
It could have. But what's amazing is that people feel that they have a right to do this, and we gave them that right.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't give it to them, but we stopped. We stopped fighting.
An Ordinary Hero was my first award-winning documentary. It's about the life of my mother, Joan Trumpauer Mulholland, and her participation in the civil rights movement. For most of us, our mothers are heroes because they're mothers, and mom is just mom. But when your mother's a civil rights icon, and yet you never really knew it, things change. Go check out An Ordinary Hero and find out how choosing to do what was right instead of what was easy helped change the world. You can find it on Amazon Prime, or visit LokiMulholland.com to purchase a copy for your collection. I look at this and I'm thinking, you hear some people say, gosh, I mean, where's all this racism coming from? It was always here.
Always there.
It's just now you're seeing it. You're now more aware of it. Black people have been talking about this for a long time.
Right.
Just a handful of white people have been. But
Right.
the fact of the matter is that, and we talk about this in the film The Uncomfortable Truth, is that foundation of racism still exists. Yes, Jim Crow was dismantled, but the foundation that it was built on is still there. Racism didn't end with the signing of the Civil Rights Act in 64 or the Voting Rights Act in 65. It's
Right.
still with us.
Right.
It didn't go away. It's and no, that old guard, that old generation that died off. Well, look, clearly there's something still in the American DNA that allowed a new generation to grow up and do this. But these people are my age and probably a little bit younger. I'm 48.
Right.
So I mean, there's something. Well, it's just like I said, it's in the DNA of America to feel that it's okay to kill a black man.
Yeah.
Let's just be honest, because really, what her intent was nothing short of of if this guy dies, then that's okay because my rights are being infringed upon. He is stepping out of line.
He was just wrong for telling me what to do.
Right. Her entitlement, her privilege.
That was all it was. He didn't pull a gun on her. He didn't do anything except he told her what the law was.
He was bird watching.
Yeah.
And she was literally standing next to a sign that said, "Put your dogs on a leash."
And she didn't.
And she didn't. And
And
he caught her on it.
All he said was, "Put your dog on a leash."
Right.
Well, how dare you talk to me that way?
Right. Who are you to tell me?
That's exactly what she did. And we don't have to make that up. And anybody that wants to argue that can knock themselves out.
And
But
the police officer just had the added authority to back up what he did. There's not that much difference between what he did and she did. He just had the authority, the
right,
badge and the gun and the
right,
system to allow him to do this.
right,
All she was doing was calling on that authority. She had her authority as a white woman and her
right,
tears and that history around her, the fear that she knew that could come because again she weaponized his blackness against him. And now, but then she's just calling the authority to support her, to back up what she had to say.
There's an African American man
Right.
who's doing X to me.
Right.
I mean, what the fuck? Who? Nobody asked you whether he was African American.
Right.
All that shit was thrown in there. Those are buzzwords. He's threatening me. There's an African American man in the park who's threatening me.
And then when she didn't feel like she was getting the response she wanted,
she changed her voice.
Oh yeah. It went to hysterics.
Oh God, was she afraid?
Right. They don't know what's going on that end.
Right.
So the police are coming into this situation.
Thinking
got a
that
white
she's being
woman,
assaulted.
a black man, and she's
Right.
getting assaulted.
Right.
So now what's going through their mind? And she knows what's going to happen because we can see what happened with George Floyd.
Yeah, she knew.
He's a threat. We got to put them down.
So when I look back on the now, we can go to the theater.
Mm-hmm.
We can go, if you live in the right place, you can go to the theater. You can do a whole bunch of stuff. You can buy clothes. You can do all kinds of stuff. But I still, when I walk in a store, if it's the wrong store, I got people following me.
Right.
I got people watching what I'm doing. Even in New York.
Both of these incidences we're talking about are above the traditional Mason-Dixon line.
Right. Right.
And look what's going on. Ahmaud Arbery's in Georgia, right? Trayvon was in Florida. Sandra was in Texas, was it?
I think so.
I think so. Tamir Rice, Cincinnati.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, I mean, it's you can't just say that. Well, yeah, this is Mississippi. Well, of course. I mean, what are we going to say now? Minneapolis. Well, of course.
I don't care where you are. They want people to in their place. And what bothers me more than the fact that the guy was killed was that the policeman felt that he had a right. And if it hadn't have been filmed, they wouldn't have done a damn thing about it. That's what bothers me.
Yeah, I think of James Byrd in Texas. That was kind of he was the gentleman that was dragged behind the truck or
Oh, the
something.
truck, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I mean Texas. What was it, 1998?
yeah. Well, there's still spots of Texas, by the way, that I don't want to be in.
Right.
Uh, and remember that I keep telling people that they didn't, and a lot of these places they didn't have a police force to protect black people.
Yeah.
That's not why it's there.
Now James Byrd was it was white. It was three white supremacists in Texas. So
Right.
you can
Yeah.
go, oh, okay, yeah, that in a twisted way you can say that makes sense.
Right. But
But Amy Cooper, by all appearances, is not your neo-Nazi
no,
white
exactly.
supremacist.
Nope. By the way, incidentally, by the way, she could have left. She didn't have to stay there.
She could have left and just complained about it to everyone on Facebook.
The guy didn't want anything to do with the dog.
Right.
That's all he said. She could have just left and said, "Well, I'll go walk my dog somewhere else." But she didn't do that.
Yeah. You know, I'm just going to say this. He asked her to put a leash on her dog. The problem was, the way she saw it, there was no leash on him.
Well, that's pretty much that's it. And she called the people that whose job it was to do that,
Right.
and she had to make sure that they understood that she was white and she was afraid because it
Right.
was a black guy
Right.
telling her what to do.
Right.
I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway,
But I mean, here we are again. I mean, we just so I come back to this. Where does that leave us? Want a great way to help a worthy organization and educate children about the civil rights movement? Visit our foundation, the Joan Trumpauer Mulholland Foundation, at thejtmfoundation.org. That's thejtmfoundation.org. We are a 501c3 established to help end racism through education. A $5 monthly recurring donation will provide curriculum for 30 students. As my mother used to say, I can't do everything, but I can do something, because doing nothing is not an option. If you have wanted to help in this cause, but didn't know how, now you can. The Joan Trumpauer Mulholland Foundation at thejtmfoundation.org.
we believe that the policeman or the judge or somebody will protect us, and we're always disappointed because they never do. See, that's not true that they never do, but
Well, I think it's in I think Michelle Alexander in the new Jim Crow. I think it's Michelle Alexander, right, who wrote that.
yes, that's who wrote that.
Doesn't she talk about that the attorney generals are not going to prosecute cops because they need the cops? There's this symbiotic relationship that exists there, and so they can't bite the hand that feeds them. So there's a
Right.
system that just protects itself.
Not only that, but they have the DAs and all those people.
The
Those are
DAs.
political.
Okay.
Those are political careers,
Right.
right? And they work with the police,
Yeah.
so they're not gonna come out and tell the truth, because the more convictions they get, the more that the higher up the rung they go.
Well, I'll be curious to see what the smear campaign that begins with Mr. Floyd, because with Ahmaud Arbery, that happened pretty quick, where they started pulling out video and stuff in 2017 and started, saying things that well, maybe he, look, he's not a clean kid.
Right, exactly.
But it makes me think about, because I'm working on this film on Emmett Till, and I'm really in the weeds in this stuff at the moment, and how the defense attorneys very quickly they knew two things. One, they had to discredit they had to create the idea that this wasn't Emmett Till's body, that it wasn't Emmett Till,
Right.
and two, that there was a white woman that was threatened / sexually assaulted.
Right.
Because it wasn't just a whistle.
Right. Right.
Actually, it really actually just was a whistle.
Right.
But the story that was told suddenly became this massive story of he grabbed me by the waist and propositioned me, said things that I can't print. That's what she testified to.
Right. Right.
Now, the jury never heard that testimony, and the defense team knew good and well that they probably weren't going to hear it because the case doesn't start with the sexual assault, the perceived sexual assault. It starts when he's kidnapped. That's what the prosecution presented. Said, look, this case doesn't start until he's actually kidnapped because what happened in the store has nothing to do with these guys kidnapping him. But they had to create this idea that they were connected because this is the Black Beast rapist story. It's interesting. I was going through the transcript. When she tells the story in her, so now she does testify in court, but it's not, the jury is excused. However, the defense team, Sidney Carlton, I think it is, the defense attorney, takes the press to Mose Wright's house and tells them basically what Carolyn Bryant is going to say on the stand. He tells the story that Carolyn eventually tells. Now, that's not the story that Carolyn told them, Carolyn Bryant.
Right.
Told the defense team. But this defense team created this elaborate story that she then tells. But he tells the press.
Wow.
Now, this is the day before the trial the jury's going to be selected before the trial starts. So on that Sunday, he tells the press all this. On Monday, anyone who's going to be in the jury is going to read that.
Right.
So they don't even have to hear it in court. But she does testify in court. The jury doesn't hear it. It's never used. But that doesn't matter because they've already heard it. They've already got their assumptions anyways.
Yeah, exactly.
But in her testimony, Emmett Till, who's just turned 14 in July. So
Right.
people say he's 14 years old. Well, they're thinking 14, he's turning 15, right? No, he's a 13-year-old kid who just turned 14. Suddenly, he becomes a man. And the term man is used 5 times to describe Emmett Till in her testimony, either between her or the defense team that's questioning her.
Wow. Yeah, I didn't know that.
He becomes a man.
Wow.
But again, it's this idea, this again the Black Beast rapist
Right.
thing, and that's what happens with with what Amy Cooper's doing.
Yes, that's exactly what she's doing.
And that history again continues to this day with this situation with Amy Cooper. She knows the game, even if she doesn't know her history. Even if she doesn't even she might not even heard it. Hopefully, she's intelligent enough. She heard about Emmett Till, but she doesn't know the history. But she knows how it's played. It's inscribed in her. It's inscribed in our DNA to know this.
Yes. Right.
Whether we're taught it or not, consciously we know it.
Well, yes.
And that police officer who puts his knee and suffocates George Floyd knows it too. That I got to keep you on your leash. I got to keep you pinned and put you in your place. That's what's going on.
What gets me, though, is that both of them feel that they're not going to be punished for this.
Right.
It's like, I'm telling you, when you watch that guy, the cop, on the guy's neck, he is as calm as the day is long.
Yeah,
he's
is.
Just
his hands in his
fine.
pocket. He's like,
yeah,
all
he's
right.
just fine. All right. So you can't breathe. Well, think this shit happens because they're not going to arrest me.
And white America will be okay with that.
Absolutely.
As long as it's not them.
Already they're making up reasons why it's okay to do that.
Right. We talked about this about Ferguson. Remember, we talked about this with Ferguson, Levon. I don't think we've talked about this on a podcast. I think we talk about it a little bit in the film. But the police force was there to contain the unrest, the protest.
Right.
To keep it from getting into white neighborhoods. You want to destroy your own neighborhood, your black neighborhood. Well, that's what you do anyway. So who cares?
That's exactly right.
All we want them to do is to keep black people in their place. Don't
Right.
get out into our area
We're
and
going to
riot.
contain this.
Contain
Exactly.
this where it's at.
And that's all they've ever. That's all they've ever done.
Protect my property.
Yep.
Well,
That's it.
gosh, what was the militia for? Those slave militias, right?
Exactly.
To protect my property.
My property.
I mean, literally, I mean, my family's property. We were slave owners. We want to make sure that these riots don't get out. These revolts, excuse me, not riots. These slave revolts for freedom
Right.
don't get out. And those who escape, well, you better bring them back.
The rest was just to keep people in their place, to understand that we are here and we will kill you.
Right.
When was the last time that the police walked into Wall Street to arrest somebody? I mean, the trial goes on forever. Forever. I remember once I was talking to somebody and I said, there was a black guy. He was a trader on Wall Street, right? And he was doing shit that was illegal. And I said, great. And people just looked at me. I said, think about it. There's a black guy on Wall Street stealing money. That's what they all do. He's just one of the guys. Why you want to tell me about? He's not stealing. He's doing what everybody else is doing. Be proud of him because that's I don't know, man. It's just I don't know.
I'm going back to here to Bob Dylan now with Emmett Till and his song about Emmett Till. He says, "If you can't speak out against this kind of thing, a crime that's so unjust, your eyes are filled with dead men's dirt, your mind is filled with dust. Your arms and legs they must be in shackles and chains, and your blood it must refuse to flow. For you let this human race fall down, so god awful low." The song is just a reminder to remind your fellow man that this kind of thing still lives today in that ghost-robed Ku Klux Klan. But if all of us folks that thinks alike, if we gave all we could give, we could make this great land of ours a greater place to live. We have to be willing to speak out. We have to be willing to say, this is wrong. It's like my mom. I come back to my mom because, it's my mom and this is who I am. But when she saw the unjust separate but equal schoolhouse, as a 10-year-old little girl, she said, this is wrong and I'm going to do something about it. And when I talk to kids, when I tell them that part of the story, kids who are her age, I tell them, look, she didn't say this is wrong. You do something about it. She didn't say this is wrong. Oh, well.
Right.
She said this is wrong and I'm going to do something about it. And that's what we all need to do.
Yes, we do.
Buffalo Springfield, for what it's worth, that song, he says, something's happening here.
Right.
Right. If you step out of line, the man comes and takes you away. Well, we got to be willing to step out of line.
Absolutely.
And not let someone like George Floyd be taken away, his life taken away.
Hopefully, that is one of the things that come out of this COVID-19 thing. Mm-hmm. That people begin to understand what this country is about. I hope. And don't worry about getting a job back or any of that shit. You worry about what kind of country you live in.
Mm-hmm. But I just want to, say his name.
I agree.
We can't just let them, it's Bob Dylan, can't stand his singing, but his words.
Well, his singing used to be good until he wouldn't take voice lessons.
Yeah. Is that what happened?
Yeah, well, I like the way he used to sing.
Yeah.
But you can't even understand what he's saying now. They had him on one of those shows or something, and he was singing, and I didn't know what the fuck he was saying.
But if you can't speak out against this kind of thing, a crime that's so unjust. I mean, he's talking, this is 1955 he's talking about. And here we are talking in 2020 about the same thing.
Yeah.
But if you can't speak out against this kind of thing, a crime that's so unjust, your eyes are filled with dead men's dirt. Your mind is filled with dust.
Wow.
You know, we gotta do something. Because doing nothing's not an option.
It's not. All right, babe.
Thanks, man. Thank you again for listening. Make sure you head to my Patreon page at patreon.com/Loki Mulholland. Show a little love if you can, and get access to even more content. Until next time, don't be afraid to get uncomfortable.